Ivan Pavlenko, From Family to Family, Chapter 3, Part 8.3, The Beginning of a New Path, read by Natalia Yapusova. In the midst of the race for America, there were changes in the district leadership. The elderly Hale was replaced by Ivan Fedorovich Strelets as the first secretary of the district committee of the party. He was still relatively young. Before the war, he had worked as the second secretary of the regional Komsomol committee. At the front, in the rank of major, he had headed the regimental party organization. And in the post-war years, he had been elected the first secretary of several district committees of the party. He had a secondary education and graduated from the party school. At first, the new secretary seemed to be an extremely energetic organizer and flaming tribune. When he spoke, it was as if sparks were pouring out of his mouth. But then, after listening to him many times and in front of different people, I became convinced that in his speeches he used a set of the same loud phrases, anecdotes, and sharply twisted sayings memorized and trained for a long period of being in the role of a hardened party member. But you can't deny his energy and ingenuity. He persistently looked for ways to increase the production of meat and milk in the district. Although some of his projects were questionable or even illegal, he later paid for them. On his initiative, a fattening station for hundreds of cattle was set up at the sugar factory with the efforts of the collective farms. At first, steers and culled cows were put there for fattening. There was enough pulp and straw was delivered from livestock farms, and the growth of meat in the district began to grow rapidly as the number of livestock to decrease. Then the district committee obliged the collective farms to buy cattle from people and feed them. But people did not like that because petting was not profitable, as the state purchase prices were lower than the market prices. Then the district committee demanded that the collective farms buy the best cows for themselves and their unproductive ones be culled for meat. It was the same. Our newspaper, in my person, praised all these measures in every way because they corresponded to the instructions of the party and the slogan, "Let's catch up with America." And the dubious and illegal things were not taken into account. The winners are not judged, the new secretary of the district committee of the party liked to say in such cases. One day the editor called me and said, "Tomorrow morning you will go to the fattening station. Strelets will be there, accompanied by some district leaders and heads of the collective farms. Listen carefully and write down all his demands and remarks in a notebook. We will prepare a page article in the newspaper." I arrived at the feeding station before everyone else. I went around the branches of each collective farm and realized that they already knew about the arrival of the district authorities there. Here and there, in addition to livestock keepers, zoo technicians and farm managers also met. The stalls were cleaned. The service personnel were dressed in clean overalls. At 10 o'clock, a cavalcade of cars drove up with managers of various ranks and heads of collective farms. The inspection began. Strelets walked ahead, listened to short reports, asked questions, praised or cursed those who had put too small bulls for fattening or had not taken care of the campaign designs. Apparently, he was conducting a general inspection before the arrival of the regional leadership, whom he wanted to dazzle with slogans, socialist commitments, and meat growth charts. I wrote everything down, except for the obscene words with which he sometimes embellished his dramatic impromptu. I wrote a long article entitled "On New Frontiers," imbued with the instructions of the first secretary of the district committee. The editor took it to Strelets for approval. He liked it. He suggested making some changes and additions that would give the article a mobilizing character and sharpness, and also agreed to have it published under his surname. The article of the first secretary of the district committee of the party on the pages of the newspaper increased its authority, and the fact that it was written by me was a recognition of my creative growth. It was also nice for the editor and me, but it is necessary to note such an unfair detail. The secretary of the district committee was sent a fee of 200 karbovanцы for such an article. And if it had been printed under my signature, then I would have received 30, 40 karbovanцы. On the one hand, this was hooliganism, and on the other, an embezzlement. What did this money mean then? 1 kilogram of meat in the bazaar cost 200 karbovanцы, and a loaf of bread in the store 18 karbovanцы. My salary was 830 karbovanцы plus a monthly fee of 150, 200 karbovanцы. The average salary of a teacher was 700 karbovanцы, and the first secretary of the district committee received 2,100 karbovanцы per month, plus holiday pay at the end of the year. The editor of the newspaper received 1,600 karbovanцы. During the 2 years of working in the editorial office, I had both creative successes and difficulties. There were various stories and acquaintances with good people. The best milkmaid in the district was I.Pavlenko from Brissy. In those unproductive times, she milked 3,000 kilograms of milk from each cow and was awarded the Order of Lenin. When the editor sent me to write an essay about her, he asked if she was a relative, since our last names were the same. I said no and drove off. And in fact, she was the wife of my father's third cousin, Fedosy Prokopovich Pavlenko. They lived in Yashniki before collectivization, had up to 10 hectares of land and a good household. Therefore, they were kicked out of the house. They moved to Brissy with Katerina's parents. Fedosy was a master of all trades, both a carpenter and a joiner. He got a job at a sugar factory in a carpentry workshop, and his wife worked as a milkmaid on a collective farm. They built a new house, started a household, and lived normally. But the war broke out, and Fedosy died at the front. Katerina was left with a school-aged daughter. She worked all the time on the farm and was so used to cows as she was to her girlfriends. She fed, watered, and cleaned them on time. Honest work and factory pulp helped her to achieve high milk yields and fame. But I had never seen her personally. I knew the Yashniki yard, which the collective farm sold to Mykola Sinchenko, and I had my parents' stories about them. Fedosy was the son of that grandfather Prokip, about whom I have already written, that he was once the first landlord in the village, and during the collectivization he was also dispossessed and kicked out of the house. He was swollen and used to go around relatives and ask for something to eat, so he died of hunger. I found Katerina on the farm. She was already over 40 years old, but she looked young and cheerful. She showed her cows, calling them affectionate names. She told me how she worked and lived, and finally invited her home. To her home. I went, and already at the table I confessed who I was and where I was from. She was so happy. She asked about the Yashniki people and sometimes laughed, then cried. Obviously, the bygone time stirred and hurt in her soul. Tears are different. One woman screams, longs for people, but they don't seem to care. And the other, without screaming or wailing, will cry in such a way that you will involuntarily shudder and feel the lump in your own throat. Something similar happened to me as well. When I listened to her silent confession, moistened with tears, about how she and Fedosy got married, how they lived and worked as a couple on their land, and how they ran away from their native village. I wrote an essay about her with great inspiration and called it Her Fate. It was an exciting story about a comprehensively beautiful person, about her mental kindness, about inexhaustible hard work and national recognition. But I did not say a word about her true fate. It was not possible, though that was what I wanted to. The second year of my work in the editorial office of the Lovitsa district newspaper Zorya was coming to an end. I grew so creatively that I actually became the leading employee of the newspaper. No one edited my materials anymore, as they were perfect both in content and form. I overcame growing demands and difficulties due to the acquired experience, high efficiency, and love for the word. So you can say that I was burning at work at my own request. There was never a moment in the daylight when I was not working, if not with my pen, then with my head. My creative engine was always at work. Wherever I went or drove, thoughts about the next articles, reports, essays didn't leave me. And when I went to bed, their options, headlines, individual sayings swarmed in my head for a long time. It used to be that you would think of something precise, imaginative, and rush from under the blanket to the note. And sometimes the word which I had been searching for a long time and could not find appeared in a dream. I would wake up and also rush to the desk. I learned to write quickly and in any conditions. I could compose some important or urgent information in a few minutes during a business trip right there on the farm or in the office of the collective farm and transmit it to the editorial office by phone. I prepared articles, reports, and small sketches at my workplace or somewhere in someone else's house where I was spending the night. When I wrote essays only, but I wrote essays only at home and mostly at night when there was absolute silence. It used to be that once I sat down, I forgot about food and sleep. I wrote and crossed out and wrote again. I didn't feel that the night had flown by. I looked in the mirror and there was a crazy person looking at me, both similar and not like me. The face was tense, the eyes burning as if in a fever. But what a joy it was when the essay was completed and newborn lines smiled at me like children. Some people think that a correspondent has the easiest time. He lies somewhere near a lake or under a spreading oak, quickly writes an essay, and there is money in his pocket. How far from the truth it is.